When my grandfather passed away, he left me something priceless, a chunk of land just outside town with a handful of rental houses he'd built decades ago. They weren't fancy, but they were solid homes with big yards and plenty of character. I hadn't paid much attention to them over the years because I lived out of state, but once I moved back, I decided to check in. To my surprise, I discovered the land was now surrounded by a sprawling HOA community. And the loudest, bossiest person in that HOA? You guessed it, Karen. When I first showed up, Karen marched straight over like she owned the place. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her nose, she looked me up and down. "You can't park here," she barked, pointing at my truck. "This is HOA property. If you're visiting, you need a guest pass." I smiled. "Actually, this is my land. I inherited it." Karen scoffed. "That's impossible. This entire neighborhood is under the HOA. You'll need to register and start paying dues." I calmly pulled out the deed with my name on it. "Nope. My grandfather bought this land long before your HOA was formed. It's mine free and clear." Her face tightened. "Well, I'll have to speak with the board about this. You can't just waltz in here claiming ownership." I shrugged and went about my day. A week later, I started visiting the rental houses to check on tenants and update leases. That's when Karen escalated. She stormed over red-faced and shouted, "What are you doing in that house? That's private property under the HOA." I laughed. "Karen, you might want to sit down for this. That's my house. In fact, all 3 of those houses belong to me. I'm the landlord." Her jaw literally dropped. "No. That's impossible. Those tenants report to the HOA, not to you." I pulled out my grandfather's paperwork, along with current rental agreements signed by the tenants. "These renters pay me. Always have. The HOA has nothing to do with it." Karen's shock turned to rage. "Well, if you're their landlord, then you're subject to HOA rules. Which means you owe thousands in back dues, and I'll fine you if your tenants so much as breathe the wrong way." That was the last straw. I called a meeting with the tenants, explained the situation, and assured them they didn't owe the HOA a penny. In fact, I promised I'd protect them from harassment. They were relieved. Turns out Karen had been bullying them for years, demanding fees for trash collection, landscaping, even mailbox use. None of it was legitimate. So I had my lawyer draft a formal notice. The HOA had no authority on my land. Any further interference would be considered harassment and trespassing. We served it directly to the board and Karen herself. Karen lost it. She pounded on my door, waving the notice in my face, screaming, "You can't do this to me. I'm in charge here. You can't be the landlord, you're lying." I leaned against the doorframe, grinning. "Karen, you just found out the hard way. I don't just own this land, I'm your landlord. That little house you live in? Guess who holds the title?" Her eyes widened. She had no idea. My grandfather had rented that house to her years ago, and the lease had quietly rolled over under my ownership. Which meant Karen, the queen of the HOA, was technically my tenant. When the reality sank in, she went pale. She mumbled something about calling the board, and stormed off. The fallout was priceless. Karen's reign of terror collapsed overnight. Once the other homeowners realized she wasn't even an owner but a renter, they turned on her. The HOA board booted her from her president role, and I issued her a formal tenant warning for harassment. 2 months later, she packed up and left. My tenants threw a little block party to celebrate the end of her reign. The neighborhood actually became peaceful for the first time in years. And me? I honored my grandfather's legacy by keeping the rentals fair and affordable. My tenants know they'll never deal with another Karen on my watch. The moral? Don't mess with someone on their own land. You might just find out the person you're bullying is the one holding your lease.